स्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The third Valli is famous for the very wonderful imagery of the Ratha. But it didn't start with that. It starts with presenting Atma in two forms. Atma as consciousness, one which we understand, on which everything including time and space depends. And the other, which we see in individual Sharira, looks like individual Atma. And often called Chidabhasa. The Abhasa of Chitta, the reflected consciousness, if you want a literal translation. Because conscious beings, conscious now, I'm using the word in the context of how we use conscious in the day-to-day usage of the language. To separate it from the insentient beings like a rock or a river or whatever. It looks like there are individual consciousness. And all the time we've been studying, there is no such thing. There is only Ekameva Advitiya Brahman. Sometimes called universal consciousness. Even that I find a misnomer. Universal would imply everywhere in the universe. If you understand it correctly, the very nature of the universe, or these days we want to talk of multiverse, depends on this consciousness. We've been trying to distinguish between Satyam and Anritam and the Satyam of Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Similarly, Jnanam and Ajnanam as separate from the Jna Dhatuartha of Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Anandam and Dukkham as separate from Ananda Swarupam. Similarly, this consciousness, a thing is conscious in the world, we imply it has a life of its own. And there are things which don't have a life of their own. Really, nothing has a life of its own. All apparent life, independent existence, is dependent upon that consciousness. But for all our Laukika dealings, we talk about sentient and insentient things. So mentally, if you picture this, it becomes easier to understand. This Valli starts with very interesting imagery. In fact, there are a lot of words in this particular mantra which you will find sound contradictory. But little chintanam will show us that there's really no contradiction. A similar imagery is expressed in Kathopanishad also. We will see that. This talks about two types of, for want of a better word, Atma. Atma original and Atma reflected, if you want. In a Sharira which has a Sukshma Sharira. Can you separate them? Physically, you cannot. It is like trying to separate an object and its reflection in a mirror. The reflection in the mirror is really non-existent. Without the object itself, there is no reflection in the mirror. Without the mirror also, there is no reflection. So this mirror is like our Sukshma Sharira, and that Sukshma Sharira as though reflects the presence of the Atma. Whereas in what we call insentient being, there is no reflection because there is no Sukshma Sharira. There is no reflecting medium. So this mantra talks of these two, consciousness. I'm very reluctantly using the words consciousness original and consciousness reflected. Please understand them to be only words. I could use some words. Just to convey the idea. The two can never be separated. Consciousness in the form of Atma is self-existent. But consciousness that we recognize in a living body is not independent. It is not swatantra, it is paratantra. Dependent on something else, like the image. Or like light and shadow. There can be no shadow without light. But light can exist without shadow. Very good example. Atma is independent. But what we perceive as individual Atma is not. What we are seeing only is that mirror equivalent, which appears to show an individual Atma. The two will always be together. Atma can be independent of everything else. But you cannot have this perceived, reflected Atma without the original Atma. Therefore, they said to be together. Therefore, what happens? This individual Atma, I'm using this word very reluctantly, I can't think of other words. Has certain characteristics. And these characteristics depend upon the Sukshma Sharira, the reflecting medium. We have seen the famous example of the sun being reflected by a number of reflecting surfaces. What is reflected in the concave surface is very different from what is reflected on the convex surface. what is reflected in a cracked reflecting surface is very different from a plain reflecting surface. What is reflected in ripply water is very different from what is reflected in the still water. They all look different, not because the sun is different, but because each of the reflecting media, each one is different. In a similar fashion, it looks as though there are several different Atmas. I have an Atma, you have an Atma, the cat has an Atma. They don't. There is only one indivisible Atma, Akhanda Atma. But because we have different surfaces which show this Atma, the existence of this Atma, differently. And this mantra uses dual case. Immediately somebody can pounce on it. All this time you have been telling us the only Ekameva Advitiya Brahman, suddenly you are saying dual case. One Atma original and one Atma reflected. Not only one Atma reflected, there are so many Atmas reflected. So Dvaitam. Dvaitam is proved. No, this is only to try and understand. That image shown here is that in every Sharira, which has a Sukshma component, both these are always present. And they are not separatable. We saw earlier, like Kusha grass, very difficult to separate without getting wrong notions, without getting hurt. So at the end of the previous Valli, the Upanishad talked about the nature of the Atma and now jumps in this Valli to an image where that Atma, along with its reflected cousin, is perceptible. We'll read the verse. Ritam pibantau
Ritam pibantau
sukritasya loke
sukritasya loke
guham pravishtav
guham
गुहां प्रविष्टौ
parame parardhe
परमे
pararde
परार्धे
chaya tapau
chayatapo
छायातपौ
brahmavido vadanti
ब्रह्मविदो वदन्ति
panchagnayo yecha trinachiketaha
पञ्चाग्न्यौ ये च
Trinachiketaha.
तृणाचिकेतः
etaha. Again, because there are many of them, plural. Loke sukritasya ritam pibantau. Pibantau, I said, is dual. Pibantau means experiencers, the two experiencers. They experiencing the karma phala. Very carefully look at this. Saying both the Atma and the so-called individual reflected Atma, both are experiencers. Seems to contradict what we've understood as Atma as being akarta, bhokta. But we will see. So, loke sukritasya ritam pibantau parame parardhe guhayam pravishtav. Into this individual sharira, which has a sukshma component, in this loke here means sharire. In the sharira, both have entered. both the Atma and the reflected Atma have entered. The trick is that if your understanding is correct, this Atma doesn't enter anywhere. This Atma is very adhisthana for space. How can it enter anywhere? It is there in every inanimate object as well. It is there in the space between two objects. It is there in the walls of any object. In the sense that is, we use, the phrase we use, all pervading. Sarvamidam tatam. So, loke sukritasya ritam pibantau parame parardhe, into this sacred space. Guhayam pravishtau, enters that space within the sharira. Again, we have a problem. We could have a problem. We don't have a problem. Somebody will say, what is this? You're saying Atma is entering in a specific space. There is no such thing. But for our understanding that we see individual sharira as though having an individual Atma, says both these Jivatma, Paramatma entered that sacred space within each sharira. How? Chaya tapau. Chaya tapau iva. Chaya atapa. Atapa is light. Like the light and shade, as though you can't have shade without the light, but light can be there. Atma is there. But this Atma that we see in individual Sharira cannot be there without the Atma. Chaya tapaviva, like this Brahmavido vadanti. Brahmavid, the ones who understand Brahman, the Jnanis, the Kavis, the Dhira Purushaha, they tell us that it is like Chaya and Atapa. And therefore, Chaya seems to exist as though in each Sharira, Chaya like Chidabhasa. But really speaking, only the Atma exists. Not only the Brahmavid, this is the understanding even of Grahasthas. Even Grahasthas understand. Grahasthas have come into Grahastha ashrama after studying for a number of years in the Brahmacharya stage. So even if they don't fully understand it, they also know. And Grahastha perform a lot of karma, prescribed karma. Here defined as Panchagni and Trinachiketa. They are supposed to perform this. Once a person enters the Grihastha ashrama, all these he starts performing because he now has Patni. And all these rituals, including Agnihotra, cannot be performed without the Patni. You've seen, and even in Yajna we do, it is actually the husband who sits and does the Sankalpa, who does the act. But he cannot do it without the wife standing behind him with the darba in her hand. Incidentally, I read somewhere that this darba, Kusagras, they've done some scientific studies on that. And they have shown For example, what they did in X-ray, they put this on top of objects and took X-ray. It absorbed bulk of the X-rays. This is proven fact. Like that, all negative vibes around us, this Dharma grass absorbs. That's why what happens is when you have this yajna, you have this, what is called kumbham, in which you have the water, and the water is sanctified by the puja, and you touch it with the darbha to extract all the negativity. No negativity gets into that. And then at the end of that, we use it for prokshanam, because it is sanctified water. That is the power of the darbha grass. So the wife has to stand with the darbha grass on the shoulder of the husband. Only then the ritual is complete. So he does all these agnis, panchagni. And it starts from the time of his marriage. The agni is never put out. The same agni is used for his cremation also. So through that period of grahasthashrama, he goes through all these. So he says even the grahasthas, the panchagnis and the trinachiketa, they also understand that. They also say the same thing. That there are two perceptible atmas. I see an atma in every being, even though I don't see it in the space in between, I don't see it physically in insentient objects, but I can feel the presence. That is what Brahmavid says, and that is what the knowledgeable Grihastha also says. That's the literal meaning of this mantra. I did that Anvaya for you. Pritam pibantau sukritasya loke. So loke sukritasya pritam pibantau. Pibantau here is jiva paramatmayoho. Paramatmanau. Parame paradde guham pravishtav. All in dual case. Like Chaya Tapa. This is what all knowledgeable people say. Now suddenly, from telling us about the nature of Atma in the previous Valli, he jumps to this. So we have to thank Bhashyakara for giving us the connection. Bhashyakara gives us the connection. He says, can you put this back on? Anand? Can do it, Atriya?
Swamiji, I do not have the access. Swamiji,
Let me see if I can.
Swamiji, I will pull it up.
Okay. I thought maybe you're not there. Yeah. Yeah. Pritam pibantau
Ritham pibantau
iti asya valyaha sambandhaha.
Asya valyaha sambandhaha.
This Valli starting with the words Ritam Pibantau iti asya valyaha sambandha. This is the way it is connected. Acharya says. How is it connected? Vidya, Vidye,
Vidya
Ya
Vidya
vidye
Nana Viruddha Phale,
nana viruddha phale
Upanyaste.
Iti
Iti
Upanyasya.
upanyasте.
We've already seen Shreyas and Prayas, Vidya and Avidya. One who understands who has the Vidya seeks Shreyas, therefore adopts a Jnana lifestyle. And the one who does not have, who is Ajnani, Avidya, he adopts a Prayas end result, for which he adopts a lifestyle which is conducive for that. Vidya, Avidye, this is again dual, Vidya and Avidya, Vidya, Avidye, Vidya cha, Avidya cha, Nana Viruddha Phale. These have completely different and opposite end results. Avidya drives one to karma. Karma gives you karma phala. Vidya directs one to follow jnanam, become a jnyasu. So one gains knowledge by following a path of Vidya, and another gains karma phala by following a path of karma. So both are different. Nana, particularly when it comes to the karma, the entire karma kanda is a huge section. Tells you all kinds of karma to do to gain what? All kinds of results. So Nana karma phala. And opposed. One is karma phala in terms of limited results, other is jnanam. Jnanam is moksha. So Vidya Vidye Nana Viruddha Phale iti Upanyaste. It's already been explained that one has Shreyas goal, other has Prayas goals. How can I convert my Prayas goals to reach Shreyas? Karma Yoga. That also has been told to us. While I do all the karma that I have to do because I'm bound, I have responsibilities, I have doubts. Therefore, I have to do karma. I have to get the body to survive. Okay, but do as a karma yogi. Then this karma phala doesn't stick to you. One can move from there very much more easily to try and gain jnanam. So that path is also available to us. Nana viruddho iti upanyaste has been explained. All of us are in one way or the other bound in karma. But if I can do the karma, in Ishavasya Upanishad we saw even 100 years of karma if you do, but you do it with an attitude of karma yogi, na lipyate. It doesn't stick to you. This is the lifestyle that was prescribed for us traditionally. You do what is to be done. Otherwise, karma binds. But with bhakti, as an important component of my karma yoga, understanding of Ishvara, arpana to Ishvara, accepting Ishvara as karma dhata, karma phaladata, I am able to imbue karma with a certain sense of divinity which cleanses me. Therefore, Shastra does not say does not tell us not to do karma. But he says do karma with an attitude which takes you towards that final goal of moksha. Every karma you do as a karma yogi. So although the phala, nana phala, the phala is not the driver. The driver is antakarana shuddhi. Then this becomes so much easier to deal with. However, while this was talked about, Upanyaste, in the previous section, we did not go into details. So he says, Natu
Natu
Saphale
Saphale
Te Yathavat
Te
ते
Yatavat
यथावत्
Nirnite
निर्णीते
Yathavat, as it is to be understood, as it is really. The details were not gone into. Although phala is given, remember in the previous Valli, we talked about the phala of both shreyas and prayers. But the detailing was not there. Yathavat na nirnite. That detailing of was not explained, not ascertained. Nirnite comes from varna dhatu, to explain. It was not explained, past tense. It was not explained, not given in detail. Na varnayati. Therefore, he says, this valli, tan nirnayartha
तन्निर्णायार्थ
yatharupaka ratharupaka kalpana.
रथरूपकल्पना.
Therefore, to understand that, to ascertain this, the two shreyas and prayers, ratharupa kalpana is given in this valli. Tat nirnayartha ratharupaka kalpana is given in this section, in this valli. This Ratha imagery is a wonderful imagery. We will see how easy it becomes to understand this. And what can I do to ensure that while I have to do a lot of karma, I don't seem to have a choice. Really, there is. According to Shankaracharya, ultimately there is a choiceless choice of becoming a jignasu, a vividisha sannyasi. But at the situation where most people are in, it looks like there is no choice. I have to do these things. I have taken on certain responsibilities, certain roles, and I have to complete them. Therefore, Shastra says, yes, please do them. And this, in this Ratha imagery, one can easily understand how to tackle that. Such a beautiful imagery. So, tan nirnayartha ratharupaka kalpana is given. Tatha cha
तथा च
pratipatti saukaryam.
प्रतिपत्तिसौकर्यम्.
This imagery, pratipatti is knowledge. Saukaryam is saukaryam. In Tamil we say, with ease. With ease, one can gain this knowledge. Karma is not a very easy thing to gain. There are lots of, I said, one feels that I have a lot of work to do, a lot of responsibility to discharge. So I have to do that. At the same time, I am not 100% convinced because the Shraddha is not absolute. Therefore, I've always had the lingering doubt. Suppose I give up all these efforts to gain temporary sukha, and there is nothing like moksha. Or if there is, I can't gain. What is my Lord then? I have lost this also, I have lost that also. My life will be over. So those doubts will be there. And these doubts are reinforced by the world around us. Constantly. Constantly. I remember soon after I took sannyasa, some people who I met in Rishikesh, people I knew from before, he was telling me, my God, I have seen him in natty business suits with sunglasses and everything. Suddenly he look at what happened. They don't understand what's going on. So they push you. Some of my clients told me, Pagal hai tu. That's what it looks like from the outside. So those people create more doubt. And the doubt is natural. We saw even Arjuna had the same doubt. Only when this was in the 6th chapter, only later chapters he got a little bit more clarity. It's a very natural doubt. What if I lose out on this small pleasures and gains that I can get, and I don't get moksha also? There again, Shastra gives us total assurance. If we have Shraddha in the Shastra and Shraddha in the Guru Vakyam, then this doubt can be put to rest. Don't worry. If you have to complete your duties, do them, but do them with an attitude of Karma Yogi. Moksha is guaranteed. There is nothing that can stop you from there. But Swamiji, when will I get moksha? Achirenadi. It might happen next Janma, it might happen this Janma, it might happen after several Janma, but it will happen. Once you've taken this path, there is no going back. You will always definitely gain that. That is an assurance given to us by Shastra. So, Pratipatti Saukaryam. Our understanding is that much easier with this Ratha imagery. Evancha
evancha
Prapta Prapya
प्राप्य
Gantra Gantavya
गंत्र गंतव्य
Vivekartham
विवेकार्थम
Dvau Atmanau
dvau
द्वौ
atmana
आत्मानौ
Upanyasyete.
उपन्यस्येते.
See, our problem is that Jnanam is only trying to make us understand there is no subject-object. There is no knower, object of knowledge, knowing difference. These differences are existing or seem to exist only when you look at it from the Vyavahartika perspective. In reality, there is no such difference. That's why if you go back to the kind of understanding we were trying to establish, that these differences belong to the Jagat. Dvandva belongs to the Jagat. Although we unfortunately have to use the same word, to describe Atma, Brahman, the word has to be understood differently. This is all Vachyartha, meaning only. I am the subject as the object. That I am talking about is the I which I have always identified with the body, mind, sense complex. But when you look at it from the Paramarthika perspective, there is no knower, knowing differentiation. Praptru, the one who is the gainer, prapta. Prapya, that which is to be gained. There is no difference. But we see a difference. We see this I, the subject, and everything else is the object. That difference becomes easier to understand with this Ratha imagery. Because otherwise we struggle with this. How can you say subject-object is the same? In fact, if you discuss with a Dvaitin or a Vishesh Advaitin, they will argue, I can see the difference. How do you say there's no difference? I've heard all about the subject-object differentiation. But you have to take a step back and understand it in the right way. So, praptru, prapya, Veda. Similarly, gantru, ganta, the one who goes, and gantavya, where you have to go. And the use of the word gantru and gantavya becomes very relevant to the Ratha imagery, because in the Ratha imagery we have clarity of saying where you want to go. And you use a means to get there, a sadhana. And I as the ganta, gantru, truch pratyaya, is the one who is trying to go to a place where there is understanding. So, gantru, gantavya, vivekartham, that prathakkaranam, which we see here, and the yojanam, which we see when we look at it from the Paramarthika perspective. That becomes, to understand that vivekartham, to understand this viveka, dvau atmanau upanyasyete. These two atmas have been shown, have been talked about. One is the Atma original and Atma reflected. The understanding must be clear that Atma original is the only Atma, is the only thing, only Vastu. What I see in individual Sharira, I identify as an individual, is only a dependent reflection. And that reflection depends upon the type of reflecting surface I have. And that will be shown. Therefore, Ritam pibantau sukritasya loke guham pravishtau parame parardhe. Into that sacred space, into that guha, the heart space. Many places you see this, Angushta matram, small space you find. It is not a space. It is not that Atma is contained in that space. You can't obviously think like that. But it is that space where you can recognize this. Upalabdhisthana. So, parame parardhe guham pravishtau, both have entered like chaya tapau. And this is what all knowledgeable people tell us. Now look at these words. All dual case, pibantau, pravishtau, all of them say that there are two of them. So we have to take recourse to Bashyam. to understand how to understand this dual case in this. Similarly, Pravishtav entered into the Guha, heart space. These all have to be clearly understood, and for that, we have very fortunate that we have Bashyam. Not only Bashyam, we also have some other commentators who commented on the Bashyam itself to make it more easy to understand. Okay, let's read the Bashyam. Ritam Satyam
ऋतं सत्यं
Avashyam Bhavitvat
अवश्यं
अवश्यं भावित्वात्
Karmaphalam
कर्मफलं
फलं
Bantau.
पिबन्तौ
Ritam, normally we distinguish between Ritam and Satyam. Because we think of Satyam as that one universal truth, which is Paramarthika Satyam. Ritam typically means what we see in the Laukika Ritam, what I think I know is correct. So Acharya takes that word Ritam and says it is Satyam. But this is relative Satyam. Why relative Satyam? He says because something which will happen, Avashyam Bhavitvat. Something which will happen is infallible. What is it that's infallible? We know that every karma produces karma phala and there is no escape from there. So this is Avashyam Bhavitva. Karma produces karma phala. Good karma produces punya phala, karma phala. Wrong karma produces papa karma phala. This much we know. And it is infallible because it is Ishvara, it's an order of karma. Therefore, Acharya interprets it as saying, Ritam is Satyam because it is Avashyam Bhavitvat. And what is that Avashyam Bhavitvat? He says Karma Phalam. So the Ritam he interprets as Karma Phalam. Because the next word makes it very sensible. You experience Karma Phalam. Nobody can escape that. Any karma one does, one will experience karma phalam. Pleasant or not so pleasant, but one will experience karma phalam. Pibantau. Piba literally means to drink. Here to mean to experience. So you can't have, you interpret literally Ritam experiencing Ritam. No, here Ritam means karma phalam, experiencing karma phalam. And because it's Pibantau, both the Atma original and Atma reflected experience karma phalam. Again, we're going to have to interpret this correctly. The individual jiva does go through experiences because karma has been committed. Atma is untouched. Sangha. But here he says both experience. Pibantau. How to understand this? So Acharya explains it in the next line. Ekaha tatra.
एकः तत्र
We'll put that back on. Karma phalam pibati.
कर्मफलं
कर्मफलं पिबन्ति पिबति भुङ्क्ते
Na itaraha.
न
न
इतरः
One experiences karma phalam. Atra ekaha karmaphalam pibati. Experiences karmaphalam. Pibati interpreted bhunkte. Experiences. He is the bhokta. Na itaraha, the other one, no. Atma doesn't have any relation to these things. But why do you then say it is, why do you say then it is experiencing? Because without the Atma, nothing will happen. That also we'll explain later. Because the two are literally impossible to separate. Therefore, it is as though Atma also experiences karmaphalam. Atma doesn't. The statement is very clear. Eka tatra karmaphalam pibati anya itaraha na. A very similar verse is there in Kathopanishad. Dva suparna sayuja sakhaya samanam vriksham parishasva jate tayoranya pippalam swadvatti anaschan anyoho abhichakashiti. Talk of two, again, similar imagery. In the tree, in the same tree, the tree is equivalent to the body. Two beautiful birds, Dva Suparna, who can't be separated. Sayuja, Sakhaya, always together. Samanam Vriksham Parishasva Jate. They are perched on the same tree. But of them one, Pippalam Swadbatti, Atti, eats fruits. Others does not do anything. It's only a Sakshi. Similar idea of two entities. One which experiences all the karma phala only in the presence of the other. Therefore, here talks about two birds, here he talks about two Atma, Jivatma, Paramatma. They're also Jivatma, Paramatma only. So they're also dual case. Okay. Ekaha tatra karma phalam pibati bhunkte na itaraha tathapi
तथापि
patra sambandhat
पात्र संबंध
पात्रसम्बन्धात्
pibanti no, pibantau, because dual case. Pibantau
पिबन्तौ
iti uchyate
इति
इति
उच्यते
उच्यते
au kshatri nyayena.
क्षत्रिन्यायेन
येन
Even then, even though one experiences karma phala, the other does not, even then, tathapi, because of the sambandha between the Atma, Paramatma and the Jivatma, which are inseparable, because the Jivatma has no independent existence, Patra Sambandhat, Pibantau, as though both experience. Iti Uchyate. Therefore, they said both are said to experience karma phala. Therefore, the mantra it says, Ritam Pibantau Suktasya Loke. Although Acharya explains saying, Eka Tatra Karma Phalam Pibati Na Itaraha. Even then, it is said that both experience karma phala because of sambandha. And he gives a very beautiful nyaya. You know, in Sanskritam, there are many different types of nyaya which are used to explain. We've seen one of them earlier, if you remember, where it is shown that the Shastra is like, I think it's called Ardha Chandra Nyaya. You see a shakha, you show a branch. So you see that branch? At the end of the branch, can you see that waning moon, third day moon or fourth day moon? look in that direction. That's another kind of nyaya. Then this Kshatri nyaya, Kshatri is umbrella. Kshatri nyaya also has a very interesting understanding. When it's drizzling, lots of people carry umbrella, particularly if you happen to be in a place like England, whether you like it or not, you have to carry an umbrella. You never know when it'll rain. But many people don't have an umbrella. But what is the general expression? They're all umbrella carrying people. They don't distinguish saying these people carry umbrella, these people don't carry umbrella. That Kshatri, both of them are Kshatris. They just said Kshatris are there. There are people walking with umbrella. Clubbing both the ones who have an umbrella and the ones who don't have an umbrella. That nyaya, by that nyaya, even though one does not experience anything, the other experiences it in the presence of this first one. By this nyaya, the mantra says, Ritam Pibantau. So, Kshatri Nyayena, by that Kshatri Nyaya, even though Atma itself experiences nothing, because Atma is Abhokta. And yet, it is said that both of them, in dual case, that both of them experience karma phala. Sukritasya
सुकृतस्य
swayam kritasya karmanaha
स्वयं कृतस्य
कर्मणः
कर्मणः
ritam iti
ऋतमिति
कृतमिति
purvena sambandha.
पूर्वेण
पूर्वेण
सम्बन्धः.
Again, sukritasya, literally the meaning is the good deed done by one, of the good deed done by one. Sukritasya. Sukritasya, there is swayam kritasya. But it is Shashti. Swayam kritasya karmanaha, the of the karma done by one, ritam, karma phala. So sukritasya has to be interpreted as karma phala. Of the karma done by one, iti purvena sambandha. That is how you understand the meaning of this word sukritasya. See, in many of these words, you can't take the literal meaning. You have to take the meaning which is contextual. That is why Shankara Bhashyam becomes critically important. Sukritasya swayam kritasya karmanaha ritam iti purvena sambandha. Similarly, it talks about other words like loke, parardhe, chaya tapau. All of these words, Acharya will explain. A typical style of writing a bhashyam. You take individual words, in the context of the mantra, the word is explained. Sometimes very simple alternate meaning for the word, sometimes more detailed meaning of the word. And sometimes also gives you alternate interpretations and shows which is the better one to use in this context. Here it doesn't go into that kind of detailing, but it does touch upon all these, including Panchagni, Trinachiketa, etc., which we will continue to see in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva
Purnameva
Om
Vashishyate.
Shanti